And here on the executive stage, we have my good friend Denise Bennett and my good friend Nigel Dalton, respectively from Australia and New Zealand. And Nigel is going to talk to us about leading in a world where AI is on the team. Good morning, Nigel.
And it's good evening from New Zealand.
Or good evening.
The end of a long week here. And
can you hear us?
Yeah, perfectly. Working very well. I see my colleague turning up as well.
All right.
Perfect.
There you go.
So now we've got Australia and New Zealand.
Hi, Denise.
Hi. Looks like
There
the
you go,
speaker
down under.
came in before the host.
Age before.
You guys are good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good session.
I loved seeing you two in the same room, even though I'm told you're not. So I was trying to work out if you were in Barcelona or Brazil, but I think you might be in both. So great job. Well, I'm relaxed now because this is about the fourth time I've been on either the main or the parallel stage, and my colleague and friend Nigel Dalton, who's joining us from New Zealand, must be after cocktail hour now. Is that right? Yeah. Oh, there you go. The wine glass is empty, and I'm sure that will help with the creativity of your presentation today. Nigel tells me he's got a good 30 minutes of content, so I'm going to hand over straight away. But Nigel Dalton, who is the chairman of our Lean Enterprise Australia board and also is on the LEI board, and is also does a lot of work for a company called ThoughtWorks and is very knowledgeable in all things digital and AI. He's going to talk to us about leading in a world where AI is on the team. We all need AI on our team. That's what I've discovered in the last 6 months. So handing over to you, Nigel.
Thank you, Denise. And I think Lean Enterprise Australia is probably a little bit unique in the world where we do cross the streams between your field of expertise around healthcare. We've got Alistair and we've got manufacturing spheres, and we've got people like me who are kind of innately digital. I'm going to attempt to share a screen here. Let's give this a go and bring you all back. And if that's working, if it's not working, I'm sure Chris and co will tell us if there is a problem to solve, and if not, then we're good to go. So let's talk about the world that we're moving into. We're all hearing about artificial intelligence. Is it going to steal our jobs? Is it going to be helpful to us? I get to think about that. My job as a social scientist, someone who's kind of a behavioral economist, an anthropologist, a sociologist, who's also been working in business for most of his life. I now get to professionally deal with this as a challenge. And it really is hot right now, and I get to think through whether these are going to be tools that we use. That's an obvious thing that those of us who are agile people might think. I also get to think, are they better treated as teammates? And that's what we're going to talk about today. But yeah, look, I am unashamedly digital. I don't have the depth of experience in manufacturing, healthcare, the really very, very important sectors where lean has made a huge difference in Australia with Denise and the team. But I'll nod to it because they are some of the most rapid technology adapters that I've seen along the way. I am an AI salesperson, so please forgive me in that sense. I will try to be sensible about that as we go today. So a couple of words to learn. If you learn nothing else from today's talk, these are fun words to have figured out. Zugzwang, which is a German word, FOMO, and FOB. Zugzwang's a German word which comes from the game of chess. And it describes where we are all at right now as leaders or people working in an organization. We kind of feel the compulsion to make a move. And in the game of chess, the clock is ticking. But if we make that move, our pieces on the board are arranged in such a fashion that it's only going to get worse from here. It's a rare position to find yourself in, but it does happen. And that's kind of how we feel right now. It's like, do I adopt AI? Do I not? Do I just ignore AI and hope it goes away? My clients are adopting AI. Where do I? And my answer today is you can't sit still. The clock is ticking. FOMO and FOBs are more common acronyms. Fear of missing out. Oh, if there's a really great AI tool, I want to know about it. phobs, fear of being suckered. So you don't want to be that person who was ripped off or is embarrassed by, oh, I should never have used that tool. That was really, that was embarrassing. So that's the landscape of our chessboard that we find ourselves on today. Now, my job is to kind of help people map where they are and where is this journey going. I drew this landscape. There's no exam at the end of this, so its complexity is not too bad. But let's the y-axis very simply between things that are made of metal and code and things that are made of muscle and blood. And at the left, low autonomy, at the right, high autonomy. So let's define some terms. We've got machines which are low autonomy and made of metal. Now, if we go into the movie world, we've got droids, from Star Wars. Well, they're kind of made of metal and code, but they've got slightly more autonomy. They're a bit sassy with their personalities. Androids are human-shaped robots. Robots are just where you physically embodied a code-based system or agent. Lots of digital bots. That's what's hot right now. They're not embodied in any way. Only Amazon's really experimenting massively with robotics, and that is a big part of manufacturing and process improvement there. Then as we go up towards a little bit more muscle and blood, we end up in the world of cyborgs, which are enhanced humans, and then just plain old humans. We're made of muscle and blood, and we think we have high autonomy. Now, ironically, that hasn't been always the case in human history. If we look at most of human history, people have been enslaved or in a feudal society for, very many tens of thousands of years, really. And the word robot comes from, it's peasant, basically. Is a Slavic word for is robota, and that is going to be very interesting as we go on the journey. And the Czech people are really held accountable for coining and popularizing the term robots with a wonderful stage play, Rossum's Universal Robots. That's your homework, to look that up. So that's the big landscape. Let's just take one dimension of that, which is going through from muscle and blood to metal and code, and the evolution of organizations. So there's a fellow called Norbert Wiener, who we know very well in technology. Wiener's paradox is fascinating because as we adopt increasingly smarter artificial intelligence, the more vital it is to ensure we have control over it, or that we're able to govern it. But at the same time, as AI becomes more intelligent, it actually becomes more difficult to govern because it's able to imagine and make things up. Large language models are a good example. So it was hard enough in human history, and most of the people on this call, I suspect, spend a lot of their time trying to optimize the integration of machines, which are way down the left-hand side of that diagram before, into organizations. And it's that the human machine interface balance that is so much of our challenge. Well, I'm here to tell you, when we get semi-autonomous bots, agents, and robots, that gets going to get even harder. And there's a line somewhere there where we integrate them in one way or another. And honestly, nobody's decided. Are we better to treat these things purely as tools for us, or should we draw them on the org chart and be very explicit about their responsibilities and accountabilities and cost, the job description of these bots and algorithms that we harness in the course of making organizations better? So a lot of people ask me, and again, it's my job to say, well, isn't this just all bullshit anyway? And there's just a big AI bubble and it's about to burst. And my analysis of that is that it's that, sure, we all feel anxious about, there's a little bit too much hype around AI, and, these companies, the top 7 companies are now something like 30% of the value of the Standard and Poor's index. So the valuations are incredible. So I did a little kind of decision tree to help you with that. And the interesting conclusion I draw is whether you believe in the AI boom is going to continue, or the AI bubble bursts, causing a kind of digital winter. What you do next is roughly the same for most companies, because most companies on the boom are discovering they're constrained by inefficient process, poorly stored or matched data, and they just can't start to really harness powerful artificial intelligence because the housekeeping hasn't been done. So the irony is that if it all goes wrong in 2026, there's only one agenda, and that is cost out and a focus on maintainership, efficiency, productivity, whatever word you want to use, which is, of course, the core business of so many lean people, is to make it better, to do more with less, or the same amount with less, or whatever it amounts to. So there's a bunch of things people will be focusing on in my world, which is technology. They're going to get rid of the waste. They're going to improve the architectures. All of these things save money, particularly the way teams are organized and how clearly the work is organized in a very traditional lean fashion, which is where, your job's going to be incredibly vital. Using AI for software delivery, that's a particular passion of ThoughtWorks along the way. So both roads pass, apart from the little tiny 5% who perform a miracle with AI. The majority of folks are going to need to focus on their process, on their teams, and the way they work. So, chin up. This is going to be okay. This is the kind of world I face in my day job at ThoughtWorks, is these incredibly entangled deliveries. I've seen, our colleague Alistair has shown me spaghetti diagrams from industrial plants where he's worked that looked as bad as this, but this is a software spaghetti diagram. The board of directors are pretty confident on the left that they financially approved just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 simple work programs. In the middle, the program office, the people orchestrating the work, have divided it up and broken it into 25 components. But in the teams, on the factory floor, it's all gone wrong in this case. And so the big question being asked by those executives is, why is this so slow? And a lot of companies don't really want to walk up to the complexity that's been created in the organization over a long time. They've just got the people in the wrong place. They have not ever 5S'd the work, and this is a bank in this case. Never thought to do that. And when they go searching for how can we make this faster, they sometimes go to the wrong place. Because technology estates, a bit like factories, become quite complex quite quickly. I find most people I run into who are executive level decision makers, they have a mental picture of their technology looking like the Lego bricks. And in fact, it's far more like a Rubik's Cube. Now, only a few people can solve a Rubik's Cube. I love the way a lot of lean people are quite keen on them because of their sense of logic, and then they're calm. It takes logic and calm to solve a Rubik, and patterns to solve a Rubik's Cube. So that's very, very appropriate. Now, I've a colleague in the industry, Matthew Skelton, his work currently is focused around flow. Believe it or not, in the world of technology, that's the hottest concept right now, is measuring and tracking and improving the flow of value to customers. Gosh, how old is that? If we were having a conversation with William Edwards Deming, he would be going, well, that's kind of obvious, perhaps in an American accent, though. Matthew's work is fascinating because he comes from a background of being a production engineer and now doing optimization of team structures to make workflow through very technically dependent organizations. His conclusion's quite simple, that organizations that can't empower their people and humans in teams are the ones failing most rapidly about deploying artificial intelligence to those teams. So I find that, well, that's really interesting. So this is again back to that we're all going to end up in the same place, doing the housekeeping for firms that have to improve their throughput. Because if we just automate this with artificial intelligence, you all know that that's not going to help. That's going to make it worse. That's going to increase the level of conflict caused at the right-hand side where the work is done. And the poor customer is not even in this diagram. You know, the customer doesn't ever get any delivery from the board of directors. The customers get delivery because of the work on the factory floor at the right. They're not going to get outcomes in any speed at all because of the, you know, it's effectively a lot like those lean concepts of dependencies on other teams, and you know, the tools aren't laid out well. This is another of my heroes. Nate Jones is a very big influencer in the world of technology and automation. He's a real sober commentator. ChatGPT 5, which was the latest model, won't save you because our biggest AI problems were never truly about the models. They aren't even technological, they're human. They're about executives waiting for magic rather than doing the hard, meticulous work required to build strong foundations. Now, if that doesn't resonate with any of all of you in terms of the work you do, I'd be amazed. So Nate's a really sober commentator for people going, you know, you need to sort shit out before you go attaching an artificial intelligence rocket to it. Now, that's not helpful when we are faced every day with demands of how are we building artificial intelligence into our practice as consultants or as improvement people or change managers or even as executives accordingly. Now, that's a very pushed problem. I think that's an interesting concept to consider in the world of lean, that we're seeing an unprecedented amount of push from these vendors without a lot of pull from us who have customers with customer problems. And my life's experience is that when there's this much push, then it's going to break. Now, I saw this in the year 2000 with the dot-com revolution. Websites were pushed and all the technologies were pushed. There wasn't people pulling to create websites for their customers at anywhere near the speed. And so the data is in. We've had ChatGPT for 3 years now, and the research has been done by much better social scientists than me. And it's this, that AI is in fact taking more time, creating more tasks and more coordination messes than non-AI. The interesting stats are that because of that expectation in the media and the pressure, now this is a group of software developers split in two between one group who are using AI and one who are not to complete the same task. The ones who were not using AI finished the task, and they'd estimated that they would take a certain amount of time. The ones with the AI tooling estimated they would be 20% faster with the tools, all about the same level of developer. Well, it turned out in the end, despite their estimates, and they were asked afterwards before the numbers were published, how did you do? You know, faster? Did you meet expectations? Oh yeah, we were 20% faster, just like we said we would be. They were 19% slower than the team who did not use AI. But their mental perception of the skills and change that they had was completely different. I'm sure you've all dealt with that kind of perception problem at some point in your own work. And this is the receipts are in. The labor market effects of large language models are statistically indistinguishable from zero. We're seeing this MIT, all the big research houses. They're not popular for publicizing these problems. It's really hard to get a return on investment from artificial intelligence. And at the macroeconomy level, we're just not seeing the improvements. Australia, our gross domestic product per hour worked is still declining, 8 quarters in a row of decline. But look at all the technologies we have. We've had 3 years of artificial intelligence. How can productivity be declining? Well, as you know, that's because it's a complex system and it's teams that produce products and produce outputs for customers. My favorite statistic of the entire year is this one, where 1 in 6 workers pretends to use artificial intelligence just to please the boss. So where should you start? Where should AI practitioners start? Should you be like the great Jim Womack and put on your virtual reality glasses and dive straight in? Well, I've got some suggestions. Now, number one, stop worrying about the fact that if you ask ChatGPT something, it doesn't know anything. Well, sadly, ChatGPT knows quite a lot, because almost every lean book that you can buy from the Lean Enterprise Institute has been illegally uploaded to most of the large language models. LibGen was the source. That's where some naughty people, I hope none of you are on this call, uploaded the books. There's Jim and John's books that are up there. Um, you know, there is Art Smalley's stuff, Understanding A3 Thinking. I mean, wow, well, we can just run off and use ChatGPT, right? Wrong. And that's because you're forgetting the fact that the essence of a large language model is its skill at making stuff up. Its next token might not come from a book. It might come from what it made up. And that's a massive risk for using those commercially made models at the moment. Now, the good news is that the lean community's been thinking about this, and Art Smalley is such a nerd. And he's spoken earlier, and I do hope you got to his talk, because I'm such an enthusiast for this tool which helps you use a tool. And that's a brilliant use. He's put a huge amount of effort and his own investment into this tool. And it's a tool to support you building A3. So I'm sure many on the call use A3 methods for problem solving. You know, you've read the books, they're in multiple languages. It's very cool. I'm not going to try and explain it here, but it's pretty scary, because I'm not sure I want John Shook sitting right next to me and coaching me. He's a pretty straightforward coach. He says what he means, like a lot of lean people, and having Art Smalley and John beside me coaching me through my A3, I better be prepared to take feedback. So, but Art talked, you can see that talk, and if you didn't get to it, watch it on the video. So this for me is where we're at, is my landscape between kind of robots all the way through. I think this landscape suggests that, most of the work we do, whilst we might think it's process optimization, a lot of it is creative problem solving and strategy. And it's compassionate because it involves humans. It's not low compassion, just blah factory rearrangement. Is genuinely adding value with people. And in that top right-hand corner, it's a person and AI as a team. And so the question becomes, how do we fit them in our team? Do we fit them explicitly and transparently into our team with a job description, with a sense of the limits of what they do? Are we transparent about how much they cost? This is my advice that I'm tending towards now. Be aware there's a very controversial field at the moment as to how we should classify AI. Should it just be a tool that people are responsible for deploying? Is it an actual team member? Or how do we think about that? And there's a lot of criticisms of overly humanizing what amount to algorithms. And I'll leave you to figure that out for yourself. I actually think they're much better made an explicit team member with their responsibilities and costs called out. Who can they tell what to do? AI bosses is a big future. But every single time you get one on your team, they're going to ask for clean data. They're going to ask you to 5S to set and sort before you even move into the world. This is back to my slide about what happens next. 5S has to happen, whether you're on an incredible trajectory with your AI, or you're just kind of in a bit of an AI funk, and 2026 is just about saving costs. So one thing we can all do is learn to think in prompts, because that's fundamental to almost every tool. And there are so many tools you can consider. But learning to think logically in prompts and construct good prompts. And there's so much online learning around that. It's actually in the same way you learn to concisely work out how to ask the right questions in the process of Gemba or otherwise. Learning to think in prompts. It's a bit like when I left university, or when I left school to go to university, I started to use computers, and I couldn't believe that suddenly knowing how to type was the barrier between me and my career. And what was learning to type for me is learning to prompt in 2025. So what is the leadership agenda? If you are a leader, or you're a thought leader or an aspiring leader, what are you going to have to think through as an AI ready leader, or in that realm of a world where that's important? Well, number one, you need to become very fluent in the difference between pull-based demand and push. This is the biggest mistake being made so far, is you just look at the hype from OpenAI, Google, Amazon, all the big players. You're getting pushed at a rate that I've never seen in my entire career. And most of the executives and leaders I know are frozen. Fight, flight, freeze. They're frozen. That's full zugzwang moment right now, where they're just going, oh my goodness, I don't want to move. And they're looking for direction, and they're looking for coherent leadership advice that stands the test. So, and one of the particularly special things about this moment is that 45-year-olds, I wish I was, I'm 62, 45-year-olds who are now decision makers. Are they going to hire consultants? Are they going to buy software? What's the strategy? They have no experience of being responsible in a time where things have been tough in the economy, whatever the cause, aging populations, climate change. If they're 45, they were 30 in 2010 when the global financial crisis hit. You probably didn't have that much responsibility. They were just probably turning up and doing the job. Might have lost their job, but didn't have to think or strategize their way out. They didn't need to have a scaffolding like leaners to frame their way out of the problem. Now, those of us who were around in 2001 with that crash, we had the 87 crash experience to build on accordingly. And everything's high stakes now. The wrong hiring decision will cost you not only the 3 months that they took, but the 3 months it takes to have the next person come up to speed. It's immense cost. And so my advice is very strongly is you need to bring to the table your ability to focus on the system as a whole system. Like that's system thinking 101. People are focusing down and very narrowly looking at one piece, trying to optimize that. We all know that's wrong. That's an incredibly pertinent approach in the world of AI. Expand the mental boundaries of your systems to the customers, get outside the factories. Use the knowledge you already have, and if you're feeling short on it, there's so many learning possibilities through LEI or LEA if you're down here in Australia, New Zealand. And I was at a talk last night which was very, very clear that critical thinking skill becomes the #1 skill going forward in the world of AI. This is that thought leader. Her book's coming out. You can go and check it out. She talks about how good friction is in fact a key part of designing for customers. And at some stage you can get to look at that. But basically my advice is this: adopt that wonderful beginner mindset that is the core of lean. And Mark Twain, I often think of Jim Womack when I hear this phrase. It's the sort of thing he'd say, but Mark Twain said it first: it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so.
What a great way to end, Nigel. And I can see we've got a 17-second clock there. I can see on the attendee list that Europe's waking up, and Australia is going to
That's
the pub.
right.
So thank you, Nigel, and I'll hand back to Chris and Roberto.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Nigel. Great to have you. Go enjoy your weekend now. Thanks for being with us.